Good evening. Welcome to the City of Sugar Land City Council meeting for Tuesday, March the 17th. We've got a fairly short agenda tonight, a little bit about that. I'm going to say the invocation. That'll be followed by the pledge. I'm going to give one brief recognition, but basically we have no recognitions and we'll be into the agenda. So if you join me. Heavenly Father, we know that you are in control. No matter what swirls around us, you control everything. Father, we ask that you'd give us wisdom and knowledge to deal with the current situation with COVID-19. Help us to always remember, first and foremost, it's the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens and our staff, our first responders. Father, we ask that you would be with us, put your hand upon our city, bless our city, bless our staff. Father, I ask that you'd bless the men and women that defend our freedoms overseas, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and our special forces. Father, we ask, as always, we ask all these things in your name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to acknowledge that we have the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council is watching online. So we've got, and they've been a great class, and they've been engaged in every meeting that we've been part of. So they're online and watching the meeting tonight. First item is public comment. Anybody that has an item that is not a public hearing is encouraged to come to the podium, identify themselves, name and address, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Hearing now, we're going to review the consent agenda. Item number 3, consent agenda. All these items are going to be taken as one motion. I am going to pull item B. So in a minute, we're going to go ahead and take the motion on the rest of those items unless a council member wants to pull it. And then we'll have a brief presentation on item number 3B.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item B. Second.
Thank you. Got a motion by Gandhi, second by McCutcheon. Any questions? You'll vote at this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. Item number 3B, first and final consideration. Consideration and action on City of Sugar Land Ordinance number 2196. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, extending the local disaster declaration for public emergency for Sugar Land, Fort Bend County, Texas, due to the COVID-19 virus. Many of you are aware that we've had an unprecedented circumstances with the COVID-19 virus. Last Friday, I issued an emergency declaration, and that declaration was designed under the law. We have that power. I have that power for 7 days. The request from me for council is for you to extend that authority for another, what is it, Meredith, 7 days or 14 days? Until we rescind it. Right now, we have that drafted from 11:59 this evening through March 31st, I think at 11:59. Okay.
The extension
Meredith,
is effective.
Mike?
Yes, sir. The extension of the disaster declaration that you declared on Friday is effective as of your motion this evening, and the restaurants and bars go into effect as of this evening at midnight.
Questions?
Voting on the disaster.
You're voting on extending my authority to to extend that original declaration for an extended period of time until we decide it's no longer needed.
That is correct. You're voting on the extension of the order that you made last week, as well as the order you made earlier today, which added the restaurants and bars to that.
Yeah, so to be clear, there were two orders. There was one last Friday, and then I signed one today. The one today is consistent with what Fort Bend County
That's what we got
added,
right here.
right.
Yeah.
which is the one last Friday was less restrictive than the one now, which adds some additional pretty significant restrictions.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, got a motion by Councilman Jacobson, second by Councilman Gandhi. Any other questions? You'll vote at this. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Is this the same restrictions that the Fort Bend County has put on, or is this more or less?
We've drafted it to be the same. They're having a press conference right now, Steve. So we've got a draft, and we've drafted ours to be as consistent as what we think they're going to adopt for that reason, because the county has the ultimate authority over ours. But we felt, because of a recommendation by Dr. Ansel Dua, that his recommendation was, even before the county decided later this afternoon, that it was in the best interest of the residents of Sugar Land that we undertake this action.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If it gets to a point where an increased, a little more restrictive ordinance is required, would that come back to the council, or is that within your purview at this point?
That would be within my purview, but as we've done before, Ramesh, what we do is we communicate with all the council members.
Yeah, I would urge that anything beyond.
Any further restrictions?
restriction
Okay.
would be discussed with the council.
Okay.
That would be my request.
Okay. We can amend it to be that, can't we, Meredith? Or is that already part of it?
That's not part of this, but if you were to add any powers, your next action would be to add the powers if you want to go to full council as opposed to just a general order by you. That's entirely possible.
So Stuart, the request, I think, from Councilman Gandhi is for you to amend your motion to be that those powers would be extended, but that the city council would be part of that. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to have a special council meeting in order to extend it, in order to impose any more restrictions than what we currently have.
I accept that amendment.
You'll accept the second?
You know, he's accepting the amendment, so does he need to read that?
Yeah, we would need to vote on the amendment and then back to the amended motion.
Well, I think if you do
As long as he accepts it as the main motion, that'll become the new
Right.
motion, and if he accepts it as the second,
yeah,
then we'll be
he's
fine.
amending his motion, so
I'll second
and you'll
that.
second
Yeah.
that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what council is now voting on is to extend that power for an indefinite period, but if additional restrictions are going to be imposed, that will require further council action.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so I've got a motion, I've got a second, got a motion by Jacobson, second by Gandhi. Any further discussion? You vote at this time, please. And it's a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Item number 4, contracts and agreements. 4A, consideration of an action on authorizing the execution of a 1-year contract with Lineberger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson LLP for the collection of delinquent municipal court fines, fees, and costs. This contract will automatically renew for an additional 4 one-year terms, and we have Ms. Kendra Beverly, I always want to flip it, Municipal Court Administrator. Kendra.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And keeping with our tradition and in this wild meeting and times that we have, it is for the next 2 items for both Kendra and Summer. This is their first presentation to Council, so I wanted to just introduce them. Kendra is our Municipal Court Administrator, and she has been with the city for a little over 5 years, and took over about 3 years ago as actual municipal court administrator. And Summer is the treasury manager and has been with the city for almost 12 years and has moved up through the organization. She started as a billing clerk and has been promoted up several times and took over treasury manager about 2 years ago. It's only been 2 years. It feels like a lot longer than that. So they're going to cover the next two items, and we'll be here if you have any questions. But I'm confident that they'll be able to handle it.
Kendra Summer.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. As you all know, I'm Kendra Beverly, the Municipal Court Administrator, and I am going to present to you the delinquent collections for municipal court fees and fines. So the city's financial management policy statements direct that the city should solicit proposals for delinquent collection services at least every 5 years. Thank you. The city last conducted it in 2014, and contracts were awarded in 2015. The city currently contracts delinquent collections for municipal court fees and fines, EMS billing, and miscellaneous receivables. On November 6th, 2019, the RFP 2020-05 was issued for delinquent collection services, and the responses were due on January 9th, 2020. The RFP was designed so that firms could respond to 1, 2, or 3 sections without being penalized for not responding to all 3 sections. There were a total of 6 responses received, 5 firms for municipal court and 3 firms for EMS and miscellaneous receivables. All responses met the minimum qualifications for the sections in which they presented. So here are the proposal evaluation statistics for all proposals that were submitted in response to this RFP for court, EMS, and miscellaneous receivables. On March 5th, the RFP process and results were reviewed with the Finance Audit Committee. So the 86th legislative session saw the passage of House Bill 2826, which requires City Council make findings when approving all contingency fee legal service contracts. It requires the Attorney General review and approve certain contingent fee legal service contracts. However, it specifically excludes contracts for the collection of court fines for the attorney review and approval. So once approved by City Council, staff will submit the EMS and miscellaneous receivables contract to the Attorney General for review. They have up to 90 days after receiving the contract to approve, and if no response is received within the 90 days, the contract is deemed approved. So for municipal court collections, Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Sampson was the top-ranked proposal for municipal court fees and fines. They're the current vendor for the municipal court and have proven their effective partnership with the city over the last 4 years. They have collected more than $2.3 million in revenue for the city of Sugar Land since 2015. Because they are the current vendor, there will be no lapse or loss of revenue and disruption in collection services because there is no implementation phase. They're licensed to collect in all 50 states and started in Texas in 1976. They have a local Houston office that employs 260 full-time personnel, and they are the largest law firm in the country collecting this type of government receivable with 21 years of experience in fees and fines. Chapter 103 of the Code of Criminal Procedure allows municipal courts to assess a flat 30% collection fee on all accounts that are 60 days past due that have been referred to a collections firm. So Linebarger proposed a collection fee of 30% on all fees that are actually collected. So due to the requirements of House Bill 2826, Council must make the following findings: that the contract is necessary for the efficient collection of delinquent municipal court fines and fees. The city does not currently possess the necessary staff, computer software, or programming, or experience to internally collect or conduct these collection services, and acquiring these will result in a substantial expense to the city. Also, that an hourly fee for delinquent collection work would likely exceed the amounts of delinquent fines and fees due. Using a contingent fee arrangement allows the collection cost to be assessed against the debtor and not the city or its taxpayers. So staff recommends City Council award a contract to Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Sampson for collections of delinquent court fines for a contract period of 1 year with 4 one-year options. Question?
Thank you, Kendra. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion because we have to do specific language. I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Lineberger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson, finding that, first, this contract is necessary for the efficient collection of delinquent municipal court fines, fees, and costs. Second, the city currently does not possess the necessary staff, computer software programming, or experience to internally conduct these collection services, and acquiring these will result in substantial expense to the city. And finally, an hourly fee for delinquent collection work would likely exceed the amounts of any delinquent bills that are due. That's the motion on the table. Nashad or Stewart, do you want to comment from the audit committee?
No, I think we had this presentation earlier in the month, and Kendra, by the way, you did a great job.
Thank you.
First presentation.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion I'll second the motion, Mayor.
Got a motion and I've got a second. Any other questions? You vote at this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. Item number 4B, consideration of an action of authorizing the execution of a one-year contract with MVBA LLC DBA Accounts Receivables Collections Group for the collection of delinquent emergency medical services and miscellaneous accounts receivables. The contract will automatically renew for an additional 4 one-year terms. And Ms. Summer O'Brien, our Treasury Manager. Summer, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be presenting on the collection of delinquent emergency services and miscellaneous accounts receivable. McCreary, Veselka, Bragg, and Allen was the top-ranked proposal for both EMS billing and miscellaneous receivables. They proposed a fee of 17% for EMS and 17% for miscellaneous receivables. The payments collected will be remitted to the city weekly, and MVBA will invoice fees monthly based on the revenues they collect. Our current fee is 17% for EMS and 20% for miscellaneous receivables. MVBA represents a large percentage of Texas municipalities and county governments. They currently represent 123 miscellaneous receivables and 16 EMS clients. MVBA has gained 16 new clients over the last 12 months. 3 were EMS and 13 were miscellaneous receivables, and they haven't lost any clients over the last 12 months. They also have 45 employees that are directly committed to the collections of delinquent fines and fees and miscellaneous receivables, and of those 45 employees, 36 of them will be directly involved in the daily collection of the delinquent cases for the city of Sugar Land. MVBA is the current vendor for both EMS and miscellaneous receivable collections. The revenue collected and the cost to the city over the last 3 years is in the table below. Currently, the outstanding accounts, as of January 31st, there are 5,755 EMS and 96 miscellaneous receivables. As you can see, the amount collected far exceeds the amount we pay to them. As mentioned earlier, the passage of HB 2826 requires City Council to make findings when approving contingency fee legal service contracts. The contract is necessary for the efficient collection of delinquent EMS billings and miscellaneous receivables. The city currently does not possess the necessary staff, computer software programming, or experience to internally conduct these collections and services, and acquiring these will result in substantial expense to the city. An hourly fee for delinquent collection work would likely exceed the amounts of delinquent accounts due. Staff recommends the City Council award the contract to MVBA for the collections of EMS billing and miscellaneous receivables debt. The contract period is of 1 year with 4 one-year options. Any questions?
Thank you, Summer. Ramesh?
Summer, is MVBA a law firm?
Yes, I believe they are. A law firm.
Okay. It's just, I've never seen a law firm with a DBA for Accounts Receivable Collection Group.
I think that's something they recently.
They created this DBA in response to House Bill 2826. And so this work is done under the DBA, but it is being done by the attorneys at MVBA.
Okay, so it's not a collection agency per se.
In the state of Texas, you have to be an attorney to do collections work, and so it is being done by attorneys.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Steve?
I think what you were saying was that this is slightly, the fee structure of this contract is slightly different from the preceding one, where this one, the fees come out of what is collected and not charged back to the customer's account. Is that correct?
Right, it's different in that municipal court works differently, but for these, they will collect the fees for us, and then they'll invoice us every month for a percentage of what they collected for us. So it'll be the 17% for EMS receivables and for miscellaneous.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I'll make the motion that we approve the contract with MVBA LLC, finding that first, this contract is necessary for the efficient collection of delinquent emergency medical services accounts and other miscellaneous receivables. Second, the city does not possess the necessary staff, computer software programming, or experience to internally conduct these collection services, and acquiring these will result in substantial expense to the city. And finally, an hourly fee for delinquent collection work would likely exceed the amounts of delinquent bills due. I've got the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a second by Kermali. You'll vote at this time, please. And that also is a 7-0 vote. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Kendra. Item number 5, ordinances and resolutions. 5A, first and final consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Ordinance number 2193, ordinance authorizing the issuance of City of Sugar Land, Texas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Bonds, Series 2020. Ms. Jennifer Brown, Director of Finance. Jennifer.
Well, Mayor, I never thought I would be up here in front of you saying that we did not go to the bond market today. And so let me kind of explain what's going on. And so we had a planned issuance of our water and sewer bonds, was scheduled, has been planned for months, was scheduled to go to a competitive sale today. We do issue bonds to fund our capital projects, and so we were going to finance about $7.5 million in utility capital projects that were approved in the fiscal year 20 budget. And this allows us to spread the cost of the projects over the useful life of the assets, and also aids us with the assistance of assists us with the management of utility rates, so that we're not having to accumulate cash to be able to pay for these projects. These bonds would be fully supported by utility charges for services, not by property taxes, and they do carry their own bond rating. In September, when you approved the budget, you approved the projects that were to be funded by the issuance of these bonds. All of our other bonds have been issued for the year. This is the last issue that we have remaining. So in order to facilitate the projects moving forward, in November you approved an intent to reimburse resolution, 19-38, stating the city's intent to reimburse up to $8 million in project costs to be funded from the proceeds of future tax-exempt bonds. So that allowed the projects to move forward. In February, we started putting together the preliminary official statements. We held ratings calls, and we did receive ratings from both Standard & Poor's and Fitch, and they rated this issue a AA category rating with a stable outlook. They did recognize the quality of management. However, we did, in fiscal year 19, due to the wet weather, we did see a decline in our revenues, and so there was a little concern about this continued coverage. So in reaction to some previous direction that we had been given from the rating agencies, and in looking at our 5-year forecast and our rate model, we had already implemented the rate increases as part of the fiscal year 20 budget. Those went into effect in January 2020. The revenues that they were looking at, that was not part of what they were looking at, because they were looking only at fiscal year 19. So that is a work in progress. We will have more discussion on the rates as we go through fiscal year 21 budget. We also have the utility rate study underway, and so we'll have a lot of information to bring forward to you on that. The capital projects that are funded, the majority are water related, a little under $5 million. You have $1.5 million in wastewater projects and a little over $1 million in preparation for meeting our 60% groundwater reduction mandate on the surface water side. So it's a little over $7.5 million in capital projects. All right, so we did review this bond issue with the Finance Audit Committee on March 5th. However, with everything that's going on with the COVID-19 virus, the market just kind of went nuts last week, I think. And then the Fed had an emergency meeting on Sunday, and they basically lowered the rates to 0.25%. On Monday, we kind of talked through it, and the rates jumped, and they were already increasing. They've increased to about a percentage point in less than a week. So we were at pretty historic lows, but in the last week, we lost a ton of ground in the bond market, and that is mainly driven by a flight to liquidity by investors. There just have been billions of dollars worth of bonds that have been out in the market that have been pulled because they're either not getting enough bids or not getting bids, or the issuers are just not comfortable with the bond market. So yesterday, after watching this, we decided to pull the issue. So we did not go forward with the sale today. It was going to be a competitive bid at 11:15. In discussion with our bond counsel and our financial advisor, we are recommending this evening that you approve a parameter ordinance for this sale. And we have typically only done this for refundings when we want to be able to time a refunding to the market. But council meets twice a month for regular action meetings. The bond market is up and down every day. What we'd like to do is let the market stabilize, and then with Joe Morrow, our financial advisor, is here from Hilltop Securities. Once the market stabilizes, then Joe will be in contact with me on a regular basis. Then we would like to recommend that we enter into a negotiated transaction for this bond issue within the parameters that you set ahead of time, and that will ensure that the city gets a fair transaction and is not kind of being whipped around by the ups and downs of the market. What a parameter sale is, and I pulled this from the last perimeter sale that we actually did was in December of 2017. It was a refunding issue where the council actually will pre-authorize the issuance of the bonds, delegate the approval authority to the city manager. We'll monitor the bond market, and then probably a day or two in advance of the sale, Joe will let me know, okay, we think the market's getting at a point where we might want to go out. We'll start talking to underwriters. We'll select an underwriter in advance, and we'll let council know who we're recommending. And that allows us a lot more flexibility to be able to conduct the sale. Just with the rates, the way they've just been jumping around and actually jumping up in the last 3 business days is just been like nothing I've seen in my lifetime. And that's getting up there for a while. So before you this evening, we have ordinance number 2193. We received a replacement ordinance this afternoon from what was originally sent in your packet. This ordinance will authorize the issuance of the Series 2020 water and sewer system revenue bonds. We have adjusted the maximum principal amount to be $7.675 million. If you'll recall, we were initially thinking that we were planning that we would sell this issue at a premium, and so the issuance amount was around $7.15 million. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. So this issuance amount will even allow us to sell it very close to par value, which would mean basically like the interest rates that are the stated rates, the coupon rates are basically what the bonds would be bought at. Joe, they ran a pricing last night, a scale. That's the word I was looking for. And had we run it yesterday, it would have ended up around 2.94? 2.94, if I'm remembering that right. It would have been worse today. And so we're recommending a maximum true interest cost, which is the all-in cost of the issue, averaged out over the weighted maturities of the bonds at 3.25%. So the ordinance, if you're willing to consider moving forward with this, then it will authorize Mike Goodrum as city manager to execute all of the related documents, and then we will advise council when we're ready to have that. And that way, we're not tying that issue to the first or third Tuesday of the month, because the market conditions are just not favorable for that right now. And speaking with bond counsel, this authorization is good for about a year. And so if it takes a couple months or 6 months before the market settles down, then we have that ability to wait to go out to sell those bonds. And we're fine with cash flows in our capital projects fund. It's not going to cause us to postpone any projects or hold back on any project progress, because these are all very important projects.
Ramesh?
So is the parameters that you're putting out, I mean, are these in line with what you guys think will be there in a year?
Joe? I'll let Joe comment to that. Who knows
'Cause
what's
you're
going
not
to
gonna
happen
get
in a
that
year?
right now.
Yeah, we would not get that today, right?
Well, the 3 1/4 is a little bit above market.
That's where I was going, Joe. That's what
I think what we expect is it's going to take a few weeks for the market to settle out, catch itself. It's dealing with fear right now. It's what we call scared money. In a couple weeks, we would expect the market will catch. We're going to have some overhead supply that'll work into the market, and we'll begin to see the normalization. And rates, if we would have sold this, a month ago, you would have been under 2%, right? I think we're going to get back in that direction. Certainly, some of the things driving the market right now, it's forward-looking, so it's pricing in the fact that a global recession is looming. It's pricing in the fact that our economy is going to grind down. And right now, there's just more sellers than there are buyers, and it's all emotional driven because people are looking at 401ks and selling out. And it's just going to take time for that to work itself out. I don't think it will take as much time for the markets to recover as it does for our nation to recover from COVID-19. They'll be more resilient. But I do not think that we're going to exceed the 3 1/4. The whole reason we want to switch is to give us the flexibility to see when the market gets better, that we're prepared to get in and take advantage of it. The 7,675,000, I think by the time that the markets recover, be it 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, that we're in, we'll sell at a premium, and that's a not to exceed amount. Both of those are.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Stuart?
Are these callable bonds, and if so,
Yes.
how soon?
Our bonds typically carry call for maturities that are 10 years out on year 9, where they're callable on or after that date. And so for this Series 2020, it was, I believe, the 2029 maturities and after were callable. But we do carry that call provision, yes.
Carol?
Thank you, Mayor. Who is on the bond council, I assume?
Andrews Kurth is our bond counsel, and some of them were remote working today, but they actually wrote this ordinance. So Tom Sage and Audra Herrera have been working with them throughout the transaction, and they're actually the ones that did write the ordinance.
Okay.
Steve?
Jennifer, I want to just confirm that when we borrow bonds for certain projects, and we've already got the project started, we're using the fund balances, and that we can convert bond proceeds back to fund balances since we've already spent some of our fund balances, and that's not an issue as it would be with a GO bond or something.
Correct. The intent to reimburse resolution that you approved in November actually authorized us to move forward using existing cash balances, and then this bond issue is going to reimburse those and replace those balances once we sell it.
So, worst case, is there a drop dead date that we're going to start holding up projects if we don't do this?
I think what you would see is a change in the fiscal year 21 budget. We do have some cash available if for some reason we were not able to sell this bond issue, but it would greatly alter the look of our financial forecast. And so by moving forward with the projects that we currently have planned, we're not hurting the city in any way by proceeding to do that. The bond market will settle down. It's just a question of when, because there's, the federal government is looking at even doing things like commercial paper and just trying to get more cash flow into the market. These are just very unprecedented times, and to me, this is not the time for us to be out in the market. It was a very difficult decision for me to make to pull this yesterday, to make that recommendation. It's not something I take lightly, but the conditions just were not right.
They're talking flooding us with liquidity.
Yeah, and so that, there's so many bond deals that have been pulled that are on it. What you said, it was 116 issues that are currently on day-to-day, that are just watching the bond market, and they're going to jump in whenever those. And so whatever capacity is there is going to get eaten up very quickly. We're lucky this is a fairly small issue. There are issuers with $350 million issues that had to pull for big states, and some had to go ahead and sell because they needed that money, and they felt it in the interest costs that they received. And I just don't feel like we should be in that situation.
I suspect that it's okay to pay a little more because every company with a line of credit is pulling money out of banks as fast as they can get it out the door. And there's going to be a lot of competition for whatever liquidity shows up, especially for businesses that aren't doing business. So I would support this. So I'd like to make no, you have to make a motion, don't you?
No, you can't see.
Okay, I'll move that. I just would like to make a motion to,
Got a motion by Porter. Do I have a second? Got a second by McCutcheon. Jennifer, I only had a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
This is will be when we sell it, 20-year issue.
Correct.
Front-end loaded, we pay off all the principal, halfway through. Okay.
It's currently structured with level principal payments as we go in forward, and we'll look at what the market will best bear for the maturity schedule. But the majority of it does get paid off in around that 10-year threshold, around 50%, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? You vote at this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Item number 5B, first consideration. Consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Ordinance number 2194, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, amending Chapter 2, Article 6, Municipal Court of the Code of Ordinances by establishing the Municipal Court of Sugar Land as a municipal court of record, providing for the appointment and term of a judge of the Municipal Court of Record, providing for civil jurisdiction for the purposes of enforcing ordinances adopted under Local Government Code Chapter 214 and Transportation Code Chapter 683, Subchapter E, providing for concurrent jurisdiction of the court with the district courts and the county courts at law for matters involving the enforcement of health and safety and nuisance abatement ordinances, and providing an effective date. We have Kendra Beverly, our Municipal Court Administrator. Kendra.
Mayor, City Council. So on March 4th, Meredith and I met with the Charter Commission for the 5-year review of the city charter. The commission recommended that City Council enact an ordinance converting the current municipal court to a municipal court of record. This recommendation was discussed during the City Council workshop on June 25th and then mentioned again by Meredith during the January 28th City Council workshop for the Charter Review Commission recommendations. On February 28th, you all were provided with a memo summarizing the recommendations in lieu of an additional workshop. So, there are approximately 180 municipal courts of record in the state of Texas, of approximately 945 municipal courts. A municipal court of record provides residents and defendants with a more just and efficient disposition of cases that arise in the city by recording its proceedings. They also provide an enhanced enforcement of city ordinances because the city maintains local control over these violations. The integrity of the proceedings is also improved with the recording of the proceedings. Trials in a municipal court of record are governed by the Code of Criminal Procedures and the federal rules of the appellate procedure. There are some requirements as becoming a court of record is controlled by Chapter 30 of the Government Code. The city may create an ordinance establishing the municipal court in Sugar Land as a municipal court of record. There's also the requirement that the judge of a municipal court of record shall be a licensed attorney with 2 or more years of experience in the practice of law in Texas. Our presiding judge and all of our associate judges meet this requirement. The municipality shall have a court reporter. However, instead of providing a court reporter, the city may provide that the proceedings are recorded by a good quality electronic recording device. And lastly, becoming a court of record also requires the creation of a new court seal, which you see on the screen. So some advantages of becoming a court of record are an enhanced enforcement of city ordinances. The defendant can no longer skip a municipal court of non-record, and therefore the city maintains local control over these violations. It also provides an increased jurisdiction for civil cases under Chapter 54 and 214 of the Local Government Code for the purpose of enforcing municipal ordinances, specifically dangerous building cases. It also provides a reduction in the number of cases appealed to county court. Currently, a defendant may appeal the judgment of a non-record municipal court to county court and have a completely new trial as if there had been no trial. A defendant may also skip a non-record municipal court altogether by entering a plea and appealing the case to county court. Because a municipal court of record is required to keep a record of its proceedings, county court renders the disposition of the appeal based on the recording, and the trial de novo is prohibited. Currently, when a case is appealed to county court, the county retains the fines, and as a municipal court of record, the city would retain the fines if the judgment was affirmed. So there are a few impacts to the court. The city will incur the cost of purchasing and installing a good quality electronic recording device. However, the cost for the recording device was planned and budgeted in FY20, and the device was installed in the courtroom in February. Also, when an appeal is made, the appellant must pay for the cost of the court reporter to prepare the transcript unless he or she is determined indigent. If the defendant is determined indigent, then the city would incur that cost of transcribing the transcript. Staff recommends the approval of ordinance number 2194, which would establish Sugar Land Municipal Court as a court of record, and we recommend setting an effective date of July 1st, 2020 to allow for notices to be posted and all parties to prepare.
Question. Ramesh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions, Kendra. First question is, when you talked about the enhanced enforcement of ordinances, could you give a couple of examples?
Yeah, so right now, basically what I meant by that is right now if a case is, a lot of city ordinances that we see right now, they get just a leapfrog appeal. So they enter a plea of no contest and it goes to county court. Whereas if we're a municipal court of record, they can no longer do the leapfrog appeal. So we maintain the local control over the case.
Okay.
And then also, sorry.
No, please.
And then also with the dangerous building cases, we'll have a sooner docket because we'll be able to hear those cases in the municipal court as opposed to waiting for a proceeding in county court.
Okay. I I know you mentioned the additional equipment, but would there be additional personnel that would be required?
No, so currently, we had a company come in and install the recording device, and it's very simple. There's no additional personnel. And because the defendant is responsible for the transcript, they would have to work with the court reporter, and then we would send the recording to the court reporter, and they pay for that cost.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
no additional personnel.
Great, thank you.
Stuart?
Mayor, as a member of the Charter Review Commission, Kendra presented this to us some time ago, and we questioned her very, very adequately. And we found that this was an excellent conversion and something that we very much need to do here. And for that, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion, please.
Got a motion by Jacobson. Do I have any other questions? Second. I've got a second by McCutcheon.
Thank you.
You'll vote at this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. Item number 6A, City Council Member Reports. Stuart, let's start with you.
Mayor, a couple of weeks ago, Councilmember Lane and I think just Councilmembers Lane and I, attended the State of Healthcare that the Chamber of Commerce put on, and it was and Kermali, sorry, and it was actually very informative because the first half hour converted to a discussion of coronavirus and what we could expect. So it was very worthwhile.
Thanks, Stuart.
No report, Mayor.
Carol?
I attended the Child Advocates of Fort Bend ribbon cutting. They had a $8 million remodel and expansion of their facilities so that they can serve more children who've been abused or neglected. And it's a really beautiful, warm, and welcoming facility. And I also attended a fundraiser for the Children's Museum of Houston.
No report, it's already been said, but I just want to make sure that staff stay safe, especially our first responders that you're out there in the front lines. Just be careful in what you're doing and be protective. We care about you all, and for staff that's staying home and others, you all cannot stay home. We need you out there, so just thank you for everything that you all are doing, and let your teams know that as well. That's it, Mayor.
Steve?
Mayor, I've been practicing social distancing.
Thank you, Steve.
Jennifer?
I attended a badge pinning for Officer Barbrick last week, so I wanted to welcome him to SLPD.
I'd like to take a minute tonight to speak to our citizens. You should know that your city council and our staff are actively, daily, and almost hourly monitoring the situation with COVID-19. The action that we took tonight, which will have an impact on many of the small businesses and restaurants in Sugar Land, we did not take lightly. We understand as much as any that this will have a financial impact on the men and women that work in those restaurants. And we didn't take that action lightly. We took that action to make sure that first and foremost, we protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. That's our, newborns all the way up through our seniors. It is the commitment of our staff, of our city, that we will do everything in our power to minimize that impact, not only on our citizens, but on our businesses. And I want to recognize and applaud our staff, our city manager, Mike Goodrum, our E-team, every one of the staff members in the audience, Pat Hughes, our emergency operations manager, Dr. Ansel Dua, who's been engaged in the process all the way through and provides us with not only valuable information way above my head to understand, but he breaks it down in a manner that we can understand it and make prudent decisions. So, Mike, thanks to you and your staff. I know you'll continue the good work that you're doing. Council will continue to be diligent. We will continue to review the facts, and just as soon as we have any indication that we're ahead of this thing, or we flatten the curve, whatever you want to call it, we'll be pulling back the restrictions that we enacted tonight. 6B, City Manager Report. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments. First off, on behalf of all of our employees, I want our citizens to know that our entire team is working diligently to do everything we can during this unprecedented event. We've been working since the beginning of February and have had teams set up. Our Emergency Operations Center has been active. Staff is currently working on our internal protocols on employees working from home and our own abilities to make sure that our staff can continue to provide the essential services to the public. One of the things the public needs to expect to see is that as this continues, we will be looking at our services and having to prioritize what the essential services that we are able to provide, because our priority is the health and safety of the community and of our employees. So that is one thing that we'll be communicating in the future as we make those decisions. We continue to work closely with the health department and our local health authority to meet. We meet on a daily basis to ensure we have the facts to make decisions to protect the community. As the mayor stated, we've implemented community mitigation measures such as limiting restaurant operations, closing the rec center, the senior center, canceling city-sponsored events and activities and court appearances to the public. Additionally, we will not be disconnecting water service at this time. Our residents are still responsible for making those payments, but there will not be disconnections for non-payment at this time. We've established 6 liaison groups with our local grocery stores, our school district, our businesses, our hospitals, nonprofits, and LIDs to make sure that we're coordinating with all of our community partners. I want the public to know that we are committed to working closely with all of our community partners for the duration of this pandemic. Finally, I would like to thank our employees because all of our employees are essential. They all work through all emergencies, and so this is obviously a big challenge for a lot of our employees with childcare, with school being out, with our first responders. So I want to thank all of our employees for their dedication to this community and what they do every day to protect our residents. And that's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Mike, the only thing I'd add is we've been in constant contact with not only Fort Bend County, but the city of Houston, Harris County, both the state, the governor's office, Texas Health Services, and the CDC. And we'll continue to operate through all those different agencies so that we have the best available information to make the best possible decisions for our employees and our public.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman.
Motion adjourned.
I've got a motion to adjourn. Thank y'all.